Hi, my name is Hani Bushra. I'm an immigration attorney, and this is another video regarding immigration matters. This is another video in the series of how to deal with the asylum interview. Today, I want to talk about 5 things that could happen in your asylum interview that could end up with you having a negative result in your asylum case. The negative result being that you're not going to be approved in the asylum office, and your case will be referred to immigration court. Immigration court takes a long time, and so our hope is that people get approved in the asylum office and don't end up in immigration court. The first thing that I've seen that would cause people to be referred to immigration court versus getting approved is if there's an inconsistency in their application. And so inconsistency is not only about what you testified about. Yes, you could have an inconsistency about something you said versus something that was written in your declaration, but it could be also inconsistencies regarding the documents or the proofs or the things that they have against you or with for you in their documents. So the United States conducts a lot of checks on you when you apply for asylum, and they get a lot of information about you. And if you are say something that they have different information about, it will affect your asylum case and will probably cause it to be referred to immigration court. There's also could be inconsistencies when it comes to uh, your past applications with the United States government. So if you had applied for a visa and you mentioned something along the lines that, oh yeah, I was working in this company from 2010 to 2018, so that's 8 years. But in your asylum interview, you testified that you only worked from 2016 to 2018. This inconsistency between your application in the embassy, for instance, to get the visa, and your asylum interview can end up hurting you and can end up you having your case referred to immigration court. Number 2, exaggerations. We've seen a lot of cases where things are exaggerated to the point of absurdity. It just becomes so absurd what happened. So I've had people come and say, is this enough harm of what happened to me? Okay, do we need to add more? First of all, we cannot add more. Okay, once you tell an attorney, I want to add more, attorney says, no way, I'm not going to talk to you. Okay, but, okay, this feeling that it has to be super harm for you to be approved for asylum is not true. Okay, that's not what the law says. Okay, the law has different definition of persecution. It has threats that could rise up to the level of persecution. It has economic deprivation that could rise up to the level of persecution. There's different ways for you to be hurt. It doesn't have to be physical harm. But I've seen people go and exaggerate their claims to the point it's so absurd nobody can believe it. I've read declarations where people are saying things like, we fell off a balcony that was in the 3rd story or the 4th story and nothing happened to us. Or we were beaten for half an hour of beating and nothing permanent damage happened to us. It doesn't make sense. Okay, and the officer would think that it doesn't make sense. Sometimes even exaggerations could include things like using extreme language, like all of them are bad. Are Muslims bad? Are they hurting you? Yes, all of them are bad. Okay, that extreme language is a sort of exaggeration that simply tells the officer you're not, being honest and you're not making sense. Or you can say like, I've never did this, and they'll get something out of there that says the word that shows that you did something along these lines. So the word never is also a way of exaggerating things. Okay, sometimes just having extreme details about very old memories, things that happened from 35 years. If you remember that, oh, the chair was colored pink fuchsia, not purple, but pink fuchsia. That's very small detail. Okay, sometimes could end up hurting you. Okay, this absurd exaggeration in getting very small details could end up hurting you. Is how can somebody remember something from that long ago? Okay. The third reason, so we talked about 2 reasons, inconsistencies and exaggerations. The third reason is ending up with a bad officer. Okay, there are bad officers in there. There are officers who are jaded, who don't like immigrants, who maybe have started as somebody who wants to be doing good in the asylum office, but have ended up being really officers who want to harm people. I'm reminded of an officer that used to be in Los Angeles, and he was somebody who used to be called Santa Claus when he came in first, and then by the end of his tenure in asylum office, he used to start his interviews by saying this: "Hey, I know 2 things about you before you walk into the office here. Number one, you probably did not sleep last night." And people will be getting, yeah, oh yeah, this is the guy gets me. He's compassionate and all of that. And he says the second thing that I probably know about you is that almost everything you're going to tell me today is a lie. And people's hearts would sink because suddenly they realize that this person is bad, has already made a judgment against them, and he's never going to give them their cases. Now, there are 2 kinds of bad officers. There's a bad officer who's dumb, who's stupid. Okay, he's an officer who ends up committing a lot of mistakes that could end up causing you as a lawyer to say, you know what, I'm going to terminate the interview. I'm not going to continue this interview. Okay? There are other officers who are very smart, who are very good at their questioning, who we know are not fair officers, but they are very good, you know. And because you chose to be inconsistent, you chose to exaggerate your things, you end up falling for them. Okay? And they end up holding something against you. Okay? So the fourth thing, the third thing was the bad officers. The fourth thing is that sometimes country conditions show that a country is improving. So what do we mean by country conditions? Every year, our State Department issues these reports about every country in the whole world to describe the human rights abuses or human rights conditions in these countries. These reports are usually issued by Department of State staff who should be not political. They should be just relying on facts and should not take politics into consideration. Okay, these reports are usually very long. 3 or 4 years ago, reports for Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador used to have sections that would be about 20 pages about gang violence. Now, these reports, this year, for instance, the same reports who had these sections that would go for 20 pages about gang violence don't have these sections anymore. They have been removed. Some of these reports have been politicized. They have become to a point where it's very clear that the United States knows that these could be used for immigration cases and asylum cases, and therefore they decide to do what? They try to make look like the country that they are reporting on is actually a good country. And so the problem is that these are the reports that the asylum officer needs to rely on to first. He can rely on other reports, but it's a primary source for him to rely on to get country conditions. Okay. Now, thank God they happen once a year, because sometimes we argue like 4 or 5 months after that there has been enough changes in the country to say that this report has become moot, but it still has an effect on them. The fifth thing that we talk about that could cause you to go into get referred to immigration court is that if there's new laws or regulations that have come down. At this point, there's no new laws. Congress has not passed any laws about asylums. Okay, so there's no laws, but there's regulations. Regulations are how the executive branch, which is the president and the USCIS and the Department of Justice, interprets the law. Okay, and these regulations, okay, really have a big effect on how asylum interviews are conducted and how asylum cases are being assessed. About a year ago, a case came down from the Board of Immigration Appeals called the Matter of AB. The Matter of AB was this attempt by this administration to limit asylum for the 3 countries I mentioned: El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Okay, and they mentioned that when looking at asylum claims, you have to look at 3 things. Number one, if you took a journey here that you went through different countries, why didn't you apply for asylum in different countries? Okay, these different countries. So, you know, if you had walked all the way from Guatemala, went to Colombia, to any of those other countries, to Mexico, why didn't you apply for asylum? Number 2, who is harming you? Is it private crime? Is it gangs? If so, then doesn't mean the government is harming you, and so you don't have a valid claim for asylum. And number 4, that or number 3, I'm sorry, not number 4. Number 3, that actions by the government to show that they are somehow controlling these bad criminal elements should be given great weight. There's other holdings in the matter of AB, but these are the big 3 that we've seen in the matter of AB. So these are being taken by asylum officers and being used against people who are not from these 3 different countries. So things like, for instance, you know, if you come to the United States from Iraq, okay, but you had a transit in a country like France, okay, why didn't you apply for asylum? Okay, because the matter of AB says if you're going somewhere, okay, if you're going to the United States and you stop somewhere, you have to be asked why you didn't apply for asylum there. Okay, we've seen these deregulations or attitudes towards analyzing something called one-year issue claims, which is people who have filed their asylums beyond the 1-year issue, and they could be eligible for an exception to the 1-year issue. Things like, you know, that they had a spouse that was abusing them and not letting them, for instance, apply for their own immigration benefit on their own, or they had a green card holder spouse or a citizen spouse who would not let them, okay, petition on their own, who was promising to petition them and would not let them apply for asylum during that 1 year. So we've seen some of this people who should have been granted the exception under the 1 year do not get a chance for their claims to be analyzed in the interview. The officer just, passes through it and says, oh yeah, it's a 1 year issue, pretty much is going to transfer it to immigration court. We're also seeing something called a great emphasis on the terrorism bar, which is a bar that says if you have materially supported a terrorist organization, then you are not eligible to get asylum, even if it was done under duress, like even if they forced you, if they held a gun on your head and said, give us your money. If you give them money, that's called material support, and at that point, you're not going to be eligible for asylum. We've seen it done in absurd ways right now. We've seen things like, people talking about people coming in and robbing their homes being robbed by a guerrilla group, and the government says, well, the fact they robbed your house, and they took a material thing from your house, something that has value, and that means you have materially supported such an organization. To recap, the 5 things that I've noticed that would cause people to be referred to immigration court is that if there's inconsistencies in their testimony, if there's inconsistency, like we said, it's not only what it's been said, but also the documents that are filed. If there's exaggeration, if there's a bad officer. Number 4, if the country conditions have improved or they seem like they have been improving. Or number 5, if there has been new laws and regulations. I hope that this information will be helpful for you as you are getting prepared for your asylum interview. I know that people sometimes cannot afford to have an attorney, and that's why I'd like to put this information out there for people who cannot do that. But it's always best to have an attorney with you, an attorney that can preserve your right against, for instance, a bad officer, who can call in a supervisor and talk to a supervisor and explain why this officer is bad. But if not, then I wish you all the best, okay, in your asylum interview if it's upcoming. If you have any questions, please call us, or please send us your questions, and we'll try our best to answer it. Thank you, and have a good day. Bye-bye.